In the vast, unending emptiness of space, where stars whisper ancient secrets and darkness reigns supreme, humanity discovered a chilling truth. Silence isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it's the breath held right before annihilation. Colony 7 floated like a single pearl against the black velvet of the cosmos. Its biodomes glittered, catching the light of 3 distant suns. 20,000 souls called this place home. Families who had journeyed across the galaxy for a new start. Children who knew Earth only from history lessons. And engineers who dreamed of building wonders among the stars. Life here was simple, but it was filled with a powerful hope, the kind that inspires people to plant gardens, knowing they might not live to see the harvest. Captain Rebecca Torres stood on the observation deck of the colony's central hub. Her reflection was a ghost against the reinforced glass as she watched supply ships docking at the outer ports. Her dark hair was pulled back in a no-nonsense bun, and her uniform was creased from 18 hours of continuous duty. At 42, she'd spent half her life in space, climbing the ranks from a shuttle pilot to the commander of the colony's entire defense force. Her eyes, the color of storm clouds, had witnessed both breathtaking beauty and unspeakable terror. Beside her, Lieutenant Owen Fletcher scanned patrol reports on his datapad. His fingers moved with the practiced speed of a career military officer. Owen was a decade younger than Rebecca, but silver was already starting to appear at his temples. He had a nervous habit of chewing his lower lip when he was concerned, and Rebecca noticed he'd been doing it a lot more lately. "Something on your mind, Lieutenant?" she asked, her gaze still fixed on the starfield. Owen looked up, startled, and offered a weak smile. "Just the usual, Captain. We've got some sensor anomalies at the edge of the system. Communication delays with the outer mining stations. Nothing we can really pin down." Rebecca finally turned to face him, her expression impossible to read. "But your instincts are telling you something different." It wasn't a question. Owen had served under her for 6 years, and she had learned to trust his intuition. He had an almost uncanny ability to sense trouble before it arrived, a gift that had saved lives more than once. "I can't explain it, Captain," Owen admitted, setting his datapad aside. "Everything looks normal on paper, but it feels like the calm before a hurricane. Like the whole universe is holding its breath." 3 levels below, in the medical wing, Dr. Hassan Okonkwo was finishing his rounds. He checked on patients with a gentle efficiency that had made him beloved throughout the colony. At 58, Hassan was the eldest member of the senior staff, his face lined with the wisdom of age and a lifetime of service. He had delivered over 300 babies on Colony 7, set countless broken bones, and talked more than one desperate soul back from the edge of despair. His assistant, a bright young woman named Zara Patel, was organizing medical supplies when Hassan entered the storage room. Zara had arrived just 8 months ago, fresh from medical school on Mars, her eyes full of ambition and her heart full of dreams. She wore her thick black hair in a long braid that swung behind her as she moved, and her smile could light up the darkest room. "Dr. Okonkwo," Zara said, looking up from her inventory tablet. "We just received a strange request from the research division. They want us to prepare all the emergency trauma bays for mass casualties." When I asked why, they wouldn't give me a straight answer. Hassan's expression grew serious. He'd been a doctor long enough to recognize the signs of something terrible brewing just beneath the surface. "How many bays did they request?" "All of them," she replied. "Every single one, including the pediatric wing." A chill ran down Hassan's spine, despite the comfortable temperature of the medical bay. "Double our supplies of blood substitutes and synthetic tissue," he said, his voice low. "Do it quietly and don't tell anyone why." Far below the colony's living quarters, in the engineering section, massive reactors hummed with contained power. Chief Engineer David Park was having the worst day of his career. David was a compact man with broad shoulders and calloused hands, the kind that belonged to someone who preferred fixing things himself. At 35, he was the youngest chief engineer in the colonial fleet, a position he'd earned through pure brilliance and an almost supernatural understanding of complex systems. The reactor readings on his main console made no sense. Power fluctuations that shouldn't exist. Energy drains that appeared and vanished without any pattern. Cascading failures in backup systems that should have been impossible. David had run every diagnostic he knew, twice, and the results only deepened the mystery. "Chief, you need to see this." The voice belonged to Natasha Volkov, his second in command, a tall woman with ice-blonde hair and the sharpest analytical mind David had ever encountered. She was pointing at a secondary monitor, showing the colony's external sensor array. "What am I looking at?" David asked, moving to stand beside her. "Nothing," she said. "That's the problem. For the last 40 minutes, our long-range sensors have detected absolutely nothing. No background radiation, no stellar wind, no cosmic debris. It's as if something is blocking our view of the universe." David felt his blood run cold. In space, absolute nothingness was more terrifying than almost anything. It meant something massive was out there, something big enough to cast a sensor shadow across the system. "Get Captain Torres on the line," he ordered. Now, Rebecca was halfway through her evening meal when the priority alert blared through the command center. She dropped her fork and was moving before the echo faded, with Owen right behind her. They burst into the command center to find a scene of controlled chaos. Every station was occupied by officers shouting readings and coordinates. "Report!" Rebecca barked, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The tactical officer, a nervous young man named Peter Chun, turned to her, his face drained of all color. "Captain, we have multiple contacts entering the system. They just appeared at the edge of our sensor range. No warning, no approach signature. It's like they materialized out of thin air." "How many contacts?" Rebecca demanded, striding towards the main tactical display. Peter swallowed hard. 73, Captain. 73 warships. And they're heading straight for us." The command center fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Colony 7 had 12 defensive platforms and 8 small patrol ships. Against a fleet of 73 warships, they might as well be throwing rocks. Owen stepped beside Rebecca, his voice low and urgent. "Captain, our weapons are designed for pirates and smugglers, not a full-scale military assault. We can't win this fight." Rebecca stared at the tactical display, watching the red icons crawl across the star map toward their home. 20,000 people depended on her. Families sleeping peacefully in their quarters, children dreaming of tomorrow, elderly couples who had come to Colony 7 to live out their final years in peace. She thought of Hassan in the medical wing, preparing for casualties he knew were coming. She thought of David in engineering, fighting to keep their systems running against impossible odds. She thought of Zara and her bright smile, her whole life still ahead of her. "No," Rebecca said quietly, her jaw set with unshakable determination. "We can't win, but we can make them pay for every meter of space they take from us. Sound general quarters. Evacuate all non-essential personnel to the deep shelters. Bring our defense platforms online and scramble every ship we have." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of her crew. "If they want Colony 7, they're going to have to pry it from our dead hands." As alarms began to wail throughout the colony, as families rushed to shelters and soldiers ran to their battle stations, as the impossible fleet drew closer with each passing second, Rebecca Torres allowed herself one single moment of absolute brutal honesty. They were going to die. All of them. But they would die standing, not on their knees. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tailies from the far reaches of space. The first wave hit Colony 7 like the fist of an angry god. Rebecca watched from the command center as plasma fire tore through their outer defense grid. Each impact sent shockwaves that rattled the station's very bones. The alien warships moved with a chilling precision, their formations tight and disciplined, carving through humanity's meager defenses like a hot knife through butter. The tactical display painted a picture of systematic annihilation. Each red icon was a threat large enough to destroy the colony single-handedly. Owen stood at his station, his fingers dancing across the controls, coordinating their defensive response with a calm efficiency that defied the chaos around him. He directed their patrol ships into desperate, evasive patterns, buying precious seconds with each maneuver. But seconds were all they had. One by one, the green icons representing their ships winked out of existence. The communications officer, Patricia Reeves, suddenly straightened in her chair. "Captain, incoming transmission from the alien fleet." "Audio only. Put it through," Rebecca ordered, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. The voice that filled the room was like grinding metal mixed with the hiss of escaping gas. Their computers translated the words, making them perfectly clear, and all the more terrifying for it. "Humans of Colony 7, you are the 13th settlement we have cleansed from this sector. Your species spreads like an infection across worlds that do not belong to you. We are the Krithak's Dominion. We do not negotiate. We do not accept surrender. We erase. Your colony will cease to exist within the hour. This is not a warning. This is merely a courtesy, so you may face your end with whatever dignity your primitive culture allows." The transmission cut off, leaving only the deafening sound of alarms and distant explosions. Peter Chun, the tactical officer, turned from his station, tears streaming down his face. "Captain, they're targeting the residential sectors. They aren't even bothering with military objectives anymore. They're just killing civilians." Rebecca felt something break inside her, but she forced her expression to remain a mask of calm. Her crew needed strength now, not despair. Redirect all remaining defensive fire to protect the civilian areas. Strip power from non-essential systems if you have to. Owen moved closer, his voice low. "Captain, we have maybe 10 minutes of effective resistance left. After that, they'll breach the main hull. The shelters will buy the civilians an hour, maybe 2 if we're lucky. Then we make those 10 minutes count," Rebecca replied, meeting his eyes. "We make them remember that humans do not go quietly." In the medical wing, Hassan worked with the controlled urgency of a man who had prepared for this moment his entire career, without ever wanting it to arrive. The trauma bays were filling faster than he could process. The smell of cauterized flesh, disinfectant, and acrid smoke filled the air. Zara moved between patients like a dancer, her initial fear transformed into focused determination. She had discovered that when everything fell apart, she became calmer, not more panicked. Her hands were steady as she applied pressure to a bleeding wound on a miner's leg, even as the lights flickered. "Doctor," she called out, "this man needs immediate surgery, or he'll lose the leg." Hassan looked up from the young mother he was stabilizing. He assessed the situation in seconds, his eyes performing the brutal calculus of triage. "Move him to Bay 3. I'll be there in 90 seconds. Keep pressure on that femoral artery." Just then, a teenage boy stumbled into the medical wing, his face pale with shock, his shirt covered in blood. Hassan recognized him as Timothy Grant, but the blood wasn't his. "Doctor," Timothy gasped, "my mother, she was in Section 4 when it got hit. I tried to pull her out, but the ceiling. There was fire everywhere. I couldn't reach her, and I really tried." But Hassan moved quickly, grasping the boy's shoulders, forcing him to make eye contact. "Timothy, listen to me. Look at me. There will be time for grief later. Right now, I need you to help save lives. Can you do that? Can you be strong enough to help me?" Timothy's breath came in ragged gasps, but after a moment, he nodded, some of the panic fading. "Yes, sir. Tell me what to do. Zara needs clean bandages from the supply room." Fast as you can." As Timothy ran, Hassan returned to his work, knowing that giving the boy a purpose might be the only thing keeping him from shattering completely. The medical wing was a vision of controlled chaos, the line between living and dying measured in seconds, and the skill of overwhelmed hands. Deep in the engineering section, David Park was performing miracles. The reactor displays showed critical warnings in a dozen different colors, each a catastrophic failure waiting to happen. But David had spent his life coaxing performance from dying machines, and he refused to let them die now. Natasha worked beside him, her analytical mind processing solutions faster than most computers. Together, they rerouted power, reinforced structural fields, and kept life support running in sections that should have been evacuated hours ago. "Chief," Natasha said, her voice tight, "Reactor 3 is showing containment degradation. If it breaches, the explosion will tear through bulkheads 7 through 12. David's jaw clenched. That was where the primary civilian shelter was, where nearly 8,000 people were hiding. Men, women, children, huddled in the dark, praying for a salvation that wasn't coming. Divert coolant from reactors 1 and 2. Shut down all non-critical power draws. We keep that reactor stable no matter what." "David," Natasha said, using his first name for the first time, "if we drain coolant from the other reactors, we'll lose primary power in 15 minutes. "Then we have 15 minutes, he replied. "Make them count." Back in the command center, Rebecca stared at the tactical display. 9 of their 12 defensive platforms were offline. The alien fleet hadn't even slowed down. Suddenly, Patricia gasped at her station. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange." A massive energy spike at the edge of the system, right at the boundary of our sensor range. "More enemy ships?" Owen asked, his voice weary. "Negative. This signature is different." "I've never seen readings like this." It's like space itself is tearing open. On the main view screen, reality seemed to shimmer and split. A point of brilliant light expanded into a swirling vortex of impossible colors. And then, emerging from that vortex, ships began to appear. Human ships. But not like any vessels Rebecca had ever seen. These were massive, sleek predators of war, their hulls marked with Earth's military insignia, but sporting technology that shouldn't exist. There were dozens of them, each one larger than the entire alien fleet combined, moving with a speed that defied physics. Peter's voice cracked. "Captain, I'm reading 75 human warships. They're broadcasting Earth military codes, but they're using quantum communication channels. How is that possible? Earth is 4 months away at maximum FTL speed." "Apparently," Owen said, a smile breaking across his face for the first time in hours. "Not anymore." A new voice filled the command center, strong and confident. "Colony 7, this is Admiral Jackson Pierce of Earth Defense Fleet 1. We received your distress call approximately 90 seconds after transmission. Apologies for the delay. New drive system still has some bugs. Please stand by while we handle your pest problem." Rebecca felt tears streaming down her face, her composure finally breaking as hope flooded through her. The command center erupted in cheers and sobs. On their screens, the impossible rescue unfolded. The Earth fleet moved with devastating precision. Weapons humanity had only theorized about tore through alien shields like tissue paper. Ships that had terrorized them for hours were vaporized in seconds. The Krithax Dominion, conquerors of 13 human colonies, suddenly found themselves facing an enemy generations beyond their own technology. In less than 6 minutes, the battle was over. Not a single alien ship escaped. Humanity had just announced to the galaxy that it was no longer on the defensive. It was a power to be reckoned with. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more. See you next time. The silence that followed the battle was more profound than any sound Rebecca Torres had ever heard. Just moments ago, Plasma fire had painted the void with death. Now, only the gentle drift of brie remained, catching the light of distant stars like snow falling in reverse. The alien fleet that came to erase humanity was simply gone, reduced to scattered atoms and fading heat signatures. Rebecca stood in the command center, her legs suddenly weak as the adrenaline that had sustained her for 3 hours drained away. Around her, the crew sat in stunned silence. Some were laughing, others crying, all of them struggling to process the impossible salvation they had just witnessed. Owen reached out and steadied her with a gentle hand on her elbow, his own eyes bright with unshed tears. The main view screen flickered, and a face appeared that would be burned into Rebecca's memory for the rest of her life. Admiral Jackson Pierce, a man in his late 50s, his dark skin marked with the scars of close combat, his gray-streaked hair cut military short. But it was his eyes that struck Rebecca most deeply, eyes that held both the hardness of a warrior and the compassion of someone who understood the cost of war on ordinary people. "Captain Torres," the admiral said, his voice gentle despite its authority. "Permission to dock medical ships and engineering teams. Your colony has taken significant damage, and we have resources that can help." Rebecca found her voice, though it came out rough. "Permission granted, Admiral. And thank you. I don't think those words are adequate for what you just did, but they're all I have right now." Admiral Pierce smiled, and the expression transformed his stern features into something almost grandfatherly. "Captain, you held that colony together against impossible odds for 3 hours with outdated weapons and a skeleton defense force. You kept 20,000 people alive long enough for us to reach you. If anyone deserves thanks, it is you and your crew. Now let us help you finish the job." Within minutes, the first Earth ships began docking with Colony 7. But these were not warships. They were hospital vessels, engineering platforms, supply carriers, each one carrying hope in the form of doctors, technicians, and enough materials to rebuild what had been destroyed. Rebecca watched through the observation windows as the first medical teams disembarked, their movements practiced and efficient, carrying equipment that gleamed with the promise of salvation. In the medical wing, Hassan looked up as the doors opened and a team of Earth doctors entered, led by a woman whose confident stride spoke of decades of experience. She was perhaps Hassan's age, with kind eyes behind practical glasses. "Dr. Okonkwo?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "I am Dr. Elizabeth Morgan, trauma specialist from Earth Medical Corps. We are here to assist. What do you need most urgently?" Hassan felt a tension he'd been carrying since the first attack finally released. "We have 37 critical patients, another 100 with serious injuries, and I'm down to 2 functioning surgical bays. We are running out of blood substitutes, and my staff has been working without rest for 3 hours." Elizabeth nodded, already signaling to her team. "We brought portable surgical units and enough supplies to treat 5,000 casualties. Your people have done extraordinary work keeping these patients alive. Now let's make sure they stay that way. Show me to your most critical cases." As Hassan led them through the crowded bays, he saw Zara leaning against a wall, her scrubs covered in blood, her face gray with exhaustion. But when she saw the reinforcements arriving, her expression transformed into something radiant. She straightened up, found her second wind, and moved to help guide the new teams to where they were needed most. Timothy Grant, the teenager who had lost his mother, was sitting with an elderly man whose leg Hassan had saved. The boy was holding the man's hand, speaking quietly, offering comfort despite his own grief. Hassan paused, watching, his heart swelling with pride. In the crucible of terror and loss, he had witnessed the best of what humanity could be. Deep in the engineering section, David looked up from his jury-rigged reactor controls to find a team of Earth engineers standing in the doorway. Their leader was a compact man with oil-stained hands and an expression that David recognized immediately. someone who spoke the language of machines better than words. "Chief Park?" the man asked, extending his hand. "Commander Frank Hughes, Engineering Corps. Heard you kept 3 damaged reactors from breaching during a full military assault. That's some impressive work. Mind if we lend a hand with the repairs?" David shook the offered hand, feeling the calluses that matched his own. "Commander, Reactor 3 has containment integrity at 42%. Reactor 2 is running on auxiliary coolant, and Reactor 1 has fractures in the magnetic containment field. I've been holding this system together with determination and prayer for the past hour." Frank grinned. "Well, determination and prayer are a good start, but we brought some actual parts too. Let me show you what Earth engineering has been developing while you folks were out here on the frontier." As the Earth engineers began unpacking equipment that looked like it belonged in a science fiction story, Natasha approached David with something resembling a smile. "Chief, we did it. We actually kept this place running long enough." David nodded, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. They had kept hope alive. Hours later, as emergency repairs progressed, Admiral Pierce requested a meeting with Rebecca. She arrived to find not just the Admiral, but also Hassan, David, Owen, and several of her senior staff, along with high-ranking Earth military officials. "Please sit," Admiral Pierce said, gesturing to the chairs. "I know you're all exhausted, but there are things you need to understand about what happened here today." Rebecca sat, suddenly aware of how much her body ached. But the Admiral's serious expression pushed away her discomfort. "The technology that brought us here," Pierce began, "is called the quantum fold drive. It bends space, allowing near-instantaneous travel across distances that should take months. We've been testing it for 8 months in absolute secrecy. Your distress call, transmitted through that ancient alien relay you discovered, was the first real-world emergency that gave us permission to deploy the fleet." Owen leaned forward. "You mean if we hadn't found that relay, if we had sent a normal distress call, we would have received it 4 months from now," Pierce confirmed, "and arrived to find nothing but wreckage and ghosts. Captain Torres, your decision to explore that ancient technology, Chief Engineer Park's ability to interface with it, Dr. Okonkwo's preparation before the attack even began, these choices saved every life on this colony." Hassan spoke quietly. "But why were the Krithaks so confident? They said they had destroyed 13 other colonies. Why did none of them hold out long enough for rescue?" The room fell silent. Pierce's expression grew heavy with old grief. "Because none of them had what Colony 7 has. Leadership that refused to surrender. People who chose to stand together rather than panic. A community that had built something worth fighting for. The other colonies fell in minutes or surrendered hoping for mercy that never came. You fought for 3 hours against overwhelming force, and that made all the difference." Rebecca felt tears threatening again, but this time she didn't fight them. "What happens now?" "Now," Pierce said, his voice becoming stronger, "we help you rebuild. Every colony in human space will receive quantum communicators and defense platforms using our new technology. The Krithaks thought we were scattered prey, easy to pick off one at a time. They are about to learn that humanity protects its own. That when you attack one of us, you attack all of us. That we do not abandon our people in the darkness." David spoke up, his practical mind already moving forward. "The refugees from the destroyed colonies, the people who lost everything, will be offered homes here if they choose." Pierce interrupted. "Colony 7 will become a symbol, the place where humanity stopped running and started fighting back. The place where ordinary people became heroes simply by refusing to give up." As the meeting continued, discussing logistics and reconstruction, Rebecca felt something shifting inside her. They had faced annihilation and survived. They had stood at the edge of extinction and been pulled back by the ingenuity of their own species. By humans on Earth, who had refused to accept that distance meant abandonment. Later, as she walked through the damaged corridors of her colony, Rebecca saw her people emerging from shelters, families reuniting, children staring wide-eyed at the Earth soldiers who had appeared like angels from impossible distances. She saw Zara sitting with Timothy Grant, both of them exhausted but alive, finding comfort in shared survival. She saw David and the Earth engineers laughing over some technical detail, the universal language of people who loved making broken things work again. And she understood, perhaps for the first time in her life, what it truly meant to be human. It wasn't about being the strongest or the most advanced. It was about refusing to abandon each other. It was about standing together when darkness came calling. It was about ordinary people making extraordinary choices because the alternative was unthinkable. Colony 7 had been broken, but not destroyed. And in the mending, it would become something stronger than it had ever been before. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one.